Good afternoon. Good afternoon, my brothers and sisters. It's me, Clifford Jefferson L. Bay, the English, Anglo-Saxon National, here again from the House of Plantagen, trying to bring us back to the understanding of who we are in this particular geographical location. First of all, we must realize that we have been subject to a social contract created by the American society, made up of the United States, which is a fraud. I'm going to prove it to you once and for all that we are Anglo-Saxons, and we're going to have the founding fathers acknowledge that through this particular lesson about who we are as a people here in these so-called lands. As you see my title here today on Wikipedia, Wikipedia means baby food. Apparently, all of us or all the people in this particular geographical location lack the understanding of where the roots of this location started from. I'm going to finish it once and for all. I'm going to finalize it once and for all. As you see here, the title is called English Americans. As we read on, this is the English Americans, also referred to as Anglo-Americans, are Americans whose ancestry originates wholly or partly in England. In the 2017 American Community Survey, English Americans are 7.1% of the total population. Okay, first of all, let's track back a little bit. We are all subject to what they call a social contract. A social contract here in America is the agreement to give up some or part of your natural rights to agree upon citizenship here in what we call America. All right? So your natural rights are waived when you become a citizen here in America. What do I mean by that? America is governed by their Constitution, which was amended in 1787. The original Constitution of 1776 was by or ruled under the authority of what they call the Crown, which was not the United Kingdom. It was under the Kingdom of England because America received their charters from Charles II, who was the son of Charles I, which was the son of King James, from the House of Stuart, which was under the jurisdiction of the Kingdom of England. All right, so as we read here, we understand that the first charters given to the so-called proprietors of East and West Jersey was George Carteret and George Berkeley or John Carteret. These proprietors received land charters from Charles II, which is a deed. Okay, they received a deed, and prior to these people receiving this deed or land charter, America was ruled by the English who gave a charter or transferred the power over to King George I, which was the ruler of the Kingdom of the British Empire or Kingdom of Britain. So now Queen Anne ruled Britain from 1702 to 1714. Then she transferred it to the House of Hanover under King George I, which was under the British Empire of the House of Hanover under the Roman Republic. Read it for yourselves. So it says English American, also referred to as Anglo-Americans, are Americans whose ancestry originates wholly or partly in England. What does ancestry mean? It deals with your lineal descent or your genealogical descent, or of who you are from your ancestors passed down, starting from your mother, or what I should say, your parents. I wouldn't call them mother or father because the term mother comes from, or originates from Scotland, which has a family crest. The term father originated from England, which has a family crest. So this is why, according to the Bible, it says, call no man your father. Because the origin of the word or the term father originates in England. England is your father. England is where the authority or the history of what we interpret as God come from, which was from the Church of England. Okay, so it says in 2017 American Community Survey, English Americans are 7.1% of the total population. Let's go down a little bit further. It says the term is distinct from British Americans. As you can see, I just said that. British got the power transferred to them in 1714 by Queen Anne, who was under the authority of under England. the term American was not even used. All right, so it says the term is distinct from British American. When you get time, look that up. Let's go a little further let's go a little further for the sake of time. It says here, the majority of the founding fathers of the United States were of English extraction. English immigrants in the 19th century, as with other groups, sought economic prosperity. They began migrating in large numbers without state support in the 1840s and continued into the 1890s. This is when you get into the so-called early wars of what we call the British colonies. British colonies were ruled under King George III, stemming from King George I, which America broke away from the so-called the founding fathers of the United States under what they call the Manifest Destiny. Now, when this war took off, the first war here was called took place in the Ohio River. Okay, it took place in the Ohio River against the French, the Canada militia, and what we call the Native Americans. Now, if you know, George Washington got their butt whooped by the Native Americans because the French got defeated. Their defender, Captain Leonard, what's his name? Leonardus Betu. I forgot how to pronounce it, but he got shot on the battlefield. Okay, George Washington got caught by the so-called Native Americans, and they released him. This is how he got away. He was under the commandership of Edward Braddock. Edward Braddock and George Washington got their ass whooped. And Benjamin Franklin told them how warlike we were as Native Americans, identified as Native Americans, but actually were the Anglo-Saxon tribes living here. And Theodore Roosevelt is going to testify to that by the end of this lesson. Okay? So he said the majority of the founding fathers of the United States claimed they were of English extraction, meaning that they were not of true English descent. They were subject to British rule. They were subjects of the British crown and not of England. All right? Let's go a little further. Sense of identity. Americans of English heritage are often seen and identified as simply American. You see that? Not English, but as simply American. Now, you got many ethnic groups here in North America. You got Chinese American, Spanish American, British American, African American. But their identity here in this geographical location is just simply American, because to be a part of this social contract or agreement by way of you being born here, which is identified by what they call a birth certificate. A birth certificate is called a certificate of live birth, which is a vital record under the authority of the government. So that means that you no longer have your rights protected by your nationality. You're now subject to the so-called government which you're born into by way of that certificate of live birth. And that's called, or filed with what they call a civil registry, which is called vital statistics. All right? Which is supposed to be created for protection of your civil rights or social rights. But the only rights you have, civil or social, is based on what you agreed to, being a membership of or a citizen of America. Because as we just read here, the sense of our identity is Americans of English heritage are often seen and identified as just simply American due to the main historic cultural ties between England and the United States and their influence on the country's population. Did you hear that? Okay. So now we understand that the distinction between English and Americans, those of English descent, has an identity dealing with England. So let's go check that out. Give me 1 second. Just type that in. Okay, here we go. English national identity. A national identity of the English as the people or ethnic group are native to England, developed in the Middle Ages, arguably beginning with the unification of the Kingdom of England in the 10th century, but especially in the 11th century, after the Norman conquest. Now, this is a lie. You have to be able to read between the lines. Norman French took over England. This is why you had the French and Indian Wars and the French and British Wars. Okay, because everybody's trying to identify themselves with the English, which goes back to the Anglo-Saxon history. It says here the national identity of the English as the people are the ethnic groups of native to England, which developed in the Middle Ages, arguably beginning with the unification of the Kingdom of England in the 10th century. Norman conquest under William the Conqueror took over in 1066. Okay? So you have to know your history. All right, now the British transferred to the United Kingdom, which ruled under Queen Elizabeth II. Let's see where else we can go. All right, so we just seen here the English national identity deals with the people or ethnic group of the native of England. Now let's go back to American. All right, or Americans. Give me 1 second. All right. Americans. Let's see here. One second. This is not what I'm looking for. Where's it at? Okay. Americans are national and citizens of the United States of America. Although national and citizens make up the majority of Americans, some dual citizenship, expatriate, and permanent residents may also claim American nationality. This is what's being done, my brothers and sisters. All right? Let's see here. Let's go to where I want to get to. That's not it. Let me find it. Here we go. American ancestry. You see that? Now we just qualified that there's a difference between American and English. Because English goes back to England. English Americans are people who adopted the name, which are ethnic groups that are claim citizenship in what they call America when it was founded by way of a charter given to them from England, who were the English. Okay? So now we already know who the English was and the English Americans were, which were the same people of all ethnic groups here in America. And we understand that America is founded by the so-called British, who broke away from the America is rooted in British, who were subjects. Let me say it again. America were subjects of British who broke away from the British and now are called America, made up of the United States. So all the people who make up what we call America, combined with the United States, are different ethnic groups who gave up their national identity to be a part of this ethnic group called America, which has no ethnicity now because you're just simply what they call American. All right? So this is where the American ancestry comes from. American ancestry refers to people in the United States who self-identify with their ancestral origin or descent as simply American, rather than more common officially recognized racial and ethnic groups that make up the bulk of American people. I just said that. Didn't I just say that? The majority of these respondents are visibly white Americans who are either simply use this response as a political statement or no longer self-identity with their original ethnic ancestral origins. So they gave up their ancestral origins just to be American. Why? Because they're on top. Under the social contract, there's two agreements to this contract of being a citizen of America. One, that your rights are protected as America according to America's laws, not your laws. of your national identity or ethnic group, but American laws, and have that rights deliberated by the American society. Why? Because based off American society and the creation of America, they agreed that by way of creating this system, that all people will be created equal, and that this could become a just system. Now, this is fraud. Why? Because they don't want to make a decision. Those who are acted to, who are in the position to make a decision, but make a decision on behalf of the people who claim to be American. They don't want to make a decision of lieu of what they call ethnic or natural rights. Why? Because they might be making a decision based off one of those groups and not in favor of the other. And to do that will be not just. But if they did do that, they themselves may find themselves subject to one of those groups. This is why they gave up their ethnic rights and agreed to these terms and conditions known as laws and rules. So this is why Americans are no longer part of their national identity by way of giving it up. You waive those rights, okay? Let's see here. Let's see where this origin comes from. Historical reference pertaining to the term American. The earliest attested use of the term American to identify an ancestral or cultural identity dates to the late 15th century, okay? So this is how far your history go back as being identified as an American, all right? Let me just take a sip of my drink. So we claim to have a history as indigenous people, but the indigenous people history only goes back to the 15th century as an American citizen. It says, with the term signifying the indigenous people discovered in the Western Hemisphere by Europeans. All right? In the following century, the term American was extended as the reference to colonists of European descent. All right? Of European descent. The Oxford English Dictionary identifies its secondary meaning as historical and states that the term American today chiefly means a native birthright or citizen of the United States. So your only birthright you have now, according to the social contract, is based off your citizenship in the United States. You waive your citizenship or membership of birthright of your native land here in America. What do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. If a diplomatic from England comes over in America based off their social status or civil rights, registered in their civil registry according to their birth. If they ran a red light, do you think they'd get a ticket? No. If a sultan came over here based off his status, you think they'd get a ticket? No. Why? Because their natural rights precede them. They didn't agree to the social contract and waive their social contract. This is based off your status, your birthright, which should be registered in the civil registry, i.e. vital statistics, within the Department of Health. So it says that in this paragraph, let's get to the meat, the nooks and crannies. President Theodore Roosevelt asserted an American race. You hear that? It says President Theodore Roosevelt asserted an American race had been formed on the American frontier. Now, the American frontier, if you look at it, was based off the history of the colonists of English descent. It says it right here. The American frontier includes the geography, history, folklore, and cultural expressions of life and forward wave of American expansion that begin with the English colonial settlement in the early 17th century, even prior to that. Admissions of the late remaining Western territories as states in 1912. The Arab massive migration and settlement was particularly encouraged by who? President Thomas Jefferson, which is my last name. Okay? Following the Louisiana Purchase, which when you get into the French and Indian War and the French and British War, giving rise to the expansion of philosophy known as the Manifest Destiny. All right? Read up on that when you get time. But going back to the meat and cranny. Nooks and crannies. President Theodore Roosevelt asserted that American race had been formed on the American frontier, one distinct from other ethnic groups such as the Anglo-Saxons. I got a question for you. Why would the Anglo-Saxons be referenced here to this particular geographical location, identified as American, which is based off the Europeans' idea under the Manifest Destiny, which was cited by Theodore Roosevelt, who was the 26th president. All right? What would he come up with this idea of American frontier of the so-called British descendants who are ethnic groups that are distinct from other ethnic groups such as the Anglo-Saxons, okay, which were of English descent, according to the American frontier, as they just stated. He believed that conquest and settlement by whites of the Indian lands was necessary to the greatness of the race, okay? We are making a new race, a new type in this country. So there's your proof right here. Theodore Roosevelt just qualified that they took over the land of the Native Americans who are actually the Anglo-Saxons, who occupied the American frontier, who are English descent. All right? We got it right there. So now let's really take it home. All right? We're going to go to a PDF article. Let's go here. I don't want this article to be too long. On Theodore Roosevelt, since he comes up with this creation of a new race. Let's pull this up for you. Yes, you guys can see that. Let me bring it up some more. Let me bring it back down. Okay. This is from Southern New Hampshire University. Theodore Roosevelt and the Native Americans, how his belief influenced his treatment of Native Americans, as we just read, were Anglo-Saxons. Okay? We're going to prove it in this article. January 2018 in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. Written by Lauren W. Smith III. It says, student Lauren W. Smith III. I certified that this student has met the requirement for formatting the capstone project, and this project is suitable for preservation in the university archive. Southern New Hampshire University College of Online and Continuing Education, February 5th, 2018. Okay? Let's start here. I'm going to let them read it for you.
Abstract. In the attempt to characterize the historical character, Theodore Roosevelt historians have oversimplified the history and the character, leading to extreme perspectives. Some historians have written of him as a hero of the people, a progressive reformer who saved the less fortunate from the wealthy elitists, while other historians referred to him as a racist bent on expansionistic ideas to conquer. Abstract. In the attempt to characterize the historical character, Theodore Roosevelt historians have oversimplified the history and the character, leading to extreme perspectives. Some historians have written of him as a hero of the people, a progressive reformer who saved the less fortunate from the wealthy elitists, while other historians referred to him as a racist bent on expansionistic ideas to conquer the world in the name of the Anglo-Saxons. The present thesis accurately interprets Theodore Roosevelt and...
You see that? It says, while other historical reference to him as a racist bent on expansionistic ideas to conquer the world in the name of the Anglo-Saxons. Did you hear that? He said that while other historians refer to him as a racist bent on expansionistic ideas to conquer the world in the name of the Anglo-Saxons. So this was not his descent. He just used the name. Your name is your surname. Your surname links to your lineal descent. Your lineal descent links to your genealogy. Now, if you don't believe me, go down to your health department and vital statistics, which files you on the civil registry in lieu of your birth, and look at the application. The application for a birth certificate or any other instrument that created by the Department of Health, it says application for a non-genealogical certificate of live birth. I'm going to show you this before the ending of this lesson, okay? So it says he was to conquer the world in the name of the Anglo-Saxons. So that means the Anglo-Saxons were the ones who ruled the world, which were Berbers. Okay, let's continue.
Shows how his progressive ideals and his racist beliefs both originated from the same part of his character. Roosevelt's progressive ideals and his Anglo-Saxon superiority views led him to believe that his superior Anglo-Saxon race was destined to conquer and then educate the inferior races in self-government. His Native American policies and actions toward Native Americans present clear evidence of how Roosevelt's dual views came together to create this enigma of a historical character.
So you see that. It says that his Native American policies and actions toward Native Americans present a clear evidence of how Roosevelt's dual views came together to create the enigma of historical character. Okay, so he conquered the world and all his ancestors by way of the history of the Anglo-Saxons, and he did it in their name. He did it in their name. The last name Theodore originated by way of Norman French who invaded England. Look up the Roosevelt family crest. It originated by way of names which were created by the influence of William the Conqueror in 1066, which invaded England. This is why he uses the name of the English, which were the Anglo-Saxon tribes, who were of Berber descent. Okay? This is why King George III's wife was named Queen Charlotte. She was a German, but the Germans were the so-called people called the Teutonic, which were from Prussia or Russia. Now, if you watch the movie Django, you see that the woman Hilda was called Hilda, right? And Django, which was Jamie Foxx, was helping a so-called German out here in America. What would a German be in America as a bounty hunter? That don't make no sense. Now, if you read who Queen Charlotte was, she was of Berber descent in Germany. Now, if you look at the word Berber, Berber has two origins of the name that can be found. One in England and one in Germany. So the Germans under Teutonic order took over England. This goes back to the days of Jerusalem or the Knights of the Crusades. We're going to prove that before the end of this lecture. Let's carry on. You can read this article when you get the time. We're going to go to chapter 8, Roosevelt and the Anglo-Saxons. Check this out. Excuse me. Just find something. Okay. Right here.
Big business, or as others label him, an imperialist and racist. Author Jack Beatty described Roosevelt as someone who championed an urban middle-class version of populist reform, appealing to a mood and movement known as progressivism, while other historians have characterized him as a racist, such as James Bradley, in his book The Imperial Cruise. Bradley stated, Theodore had imbibed the Aryan myth too. Bradley further explained how Roosevelt's education included how Americans were the final part of the Aryan/Teuton/Anglo-Saxon flow of civilization moving west from Germany, through England to America. Then Roosevelt fashioned a winning political persona as a white male brave enough to vanquish lesser races. 3. In their attempts to characterize the historical character, Theodore Roosevelt, historians have oversimplified the history and the historical figure to create an extreme perspective of Roosevelt. One way or another, analysis shows that his progressive nature and his racist beliefs both come from the same part of his character. Roosevelt's Anglo-Saxon beliefs mixed with his religious beliefs and created a political character that thought a superior race was destined to conquer the world and parent those inferior races while educating them in culture and self-government. 1. Jack Beatty, Age of Betrayal, The Triumph of Money.
That's just references that you can go to. Let's read a little bit more. Now, we know that Theodore Roosevelt was homeschooled, if you know his history. All right? He went to Harvard University. He didn't have a clue of what the Anglo-Saxon history was. He just was taught the history of the Anglo-Saxons and assumed to adopt it. Now, if you want to deal with the history of who he was as relative to the history of the Anglo-Saxons, look up white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Okay? White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. We're going to do that. Give me a second. All right, let's go right here.
Panama Canal. Roosevelt's deeds were deemed, not only necessary, but also in line with progressivism. But Roosevelt also believed in the dominance of what he called the Anglo-American superiority, a belief developed as a young boy from his father and his time studying in Germany. The belief developed further while Roosevelt attended Harvard and Columbia Law School. As Evan Thomas describes in his book The War Lovers, Roosevelt, Lodge, Hearst, and the Rush to Empire 1898, Roosevelt's education at Harvard was a hotbed of eugenics. Harvard scholars were sure that Anglo-Saxons had emerged as the master race over the centuries that followed, for his education in racism came through in Roosevelt's own book The Winning of the West, From the Alleghenies to the Mississippi, in which he described the English race, on the contrary, has a perfectly continuous history. Roosevelt went on to describe how the sea rovers who won England to a great extent actually displaced the native Britons and then either slew or drove off or assimilated the original inhabitants.
There you go. Roosevelt went to describe how the sea rovers who won England to a great extent actually displaced the native Britons and then either slew or drove off the assimilated the original inhabitants. This is what he did. They're talking about right here. Right here. Nowhere else but right here. Okay? Let's keep going.
3. Described how those inferior races were to be eliminated, driven off, or assimilated into the dominant and superior race that expanded across the world. It was Roosevelt's belief in a dominant race, one that would conquer inferior races and then prepare those inferior races for self-government, which set the groundwork for his push against immigration, drive to spread into Central America and across the Pacific Ocean, and his treatment of Native Americans. Roosevelt called on Anglo-Saxon women in America to have more children to offset the immigrants entering the country. 6. His belief in a superior race's responsibility to teach lower races was his reason for support of the Spanish-American War in Cuba and the Philippines. Roosevelt's Anglo-Saxon superiority belief was his justification for the treatment of Native Americans in America. Theodore Roosevelt's actions against the Native Americans were an extension of his progressive reform beliefs, which led him to support imperialism. It was the leader's duty to take care of not only those less fortunate within the country, but to also take care of those inferior races around the world, including their neighbors that they had recently liberated to the nation's south. Theodore Roosevelt's actions against the Native Americans revealed that he wanted to help, but they also were an extension of his preconceived ideas about Native Americans' capabilities and their need for a complete cultural overhaul, as their way of life did not fit into his beliefs about his superior Anglo-American culture.
So you see that? He was totally against the history of the Anglo-Saxons, but he loved the name. Let's go prove this, all right? Because I want to go to white Anglo-Saxon Protestants before we close this lesson. Okay, let's go ahead. Now, Teutonic, this name right here. This is what we're going to concentrate on when we get through this paragraph.
Race. There is much evidence to support that the Anglo-Saxon and Teutonic racist beliefs were taught to Roosevelt while he was a child in Germany and then later when he attended Harvard and Columbia Law School. The evidence supports that Roosevelt may not have pushed the Anglo-Saxon or Aryan racist beliefs. However, he did support what he called the Anglo-American spirit of conquest. The idea that Anglo-Saxons had spread to America and conquered all they encountered to become the superior race was where Roosevelt agreed with his professors, but after that, Roosevelt's beliefs diverged. He believed that it was the Anglo-Americans' right to conquer the inferior natives as they moved westward, as pioneers, across the entire continent. If the Native Americans assimilated into Anglo-American society, accepted the concept of private land ownership and became citizens, then their blood would be added to Roosevelt's Anglo-American superior race. However, if they chose not to assimilate, then it is the responsibility of the superior race to protect them, and that meant living separated from the whites that had exploited the natives' ignorance. Roosevelt's beliefs and his policies in general would justify the expansion of the Anglo-Americans into other inferior races.
You see that? Would justify the expansion of the Anglo-Americans into other inferior races. There we go. Now let's really come bring it home. All right? Let's find this out. Page 25. Let's look at what this man did and all those who came before him. Let's look at what this man did. Y'all don't believe me. Y'all keep nobody reads my lessons. And for that, y'all gonna suffer. Y'all will suffer what's coming. I've been nice, but I'm not being nice anymore. All those who think they know, now you've been taught of what really happened. Okay, where's it at? Where's that? Let me find it. I think I passed it. Give me 1 second. Or rather, where is it at? Let me just find it, brothers. That's not it. Look at page 45. Just let me find it. It's worth the wait. It's worth the wait. Wait. I'm coming close to it. I'm coming close to it. Let me find it. Give me 1 second. 48. It's a deep article. If y'all can read it, you got a lot of information there. A lot of information. Oh boy, where is it at? You gotta give me a second. Let me go back to the top. Let me go back to the top where the glossary at so I can find the actual page. The Native Americans, where the glossary at? I'm sorry, brothers and sisters. About the American parenting, page 58. Which one was it? Page 8? I'm sorry, brothers and sisters. I hate that I lost it. We're going to go to 46. We're going to go to 46. Show you how ruthless this man was. Okay, let's see. Americans pleaded goods. I'm going to find it. I don't care how long it takes me, so y'all can be upset with me, but it's worth it. TP. Remain pure. Anglo-Saxon spirit works with educating the people and the government. The American connection present with the whole people and that they understood the law. Where's this at? I couldn't believe I read it myself. American race is best enlightened race to benefit. I can't believe I lost this. I can't believe I actually lost it, my brothers and sisters. I really don't. Parenting, let's see if this is it. Turkey, no, that's not it. Come on, Cliff. Oh my God, I can't believe this. Expected he took advantage. No, that's not it. I wish I can pause the video and just find it, but it's not here. It's here, but I just can't find it. Because where is this at? Y'all can just digest what I gave you so far until I find this. Because when I find it, it's going to blow your mind. I don't care. I'm taking my time. I'm going to find this. Let me go back up into the top. Native American taking this. Oh boy. Okay, this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna stop this.